The explosion of IoT devices in your network is only going to grow larger as time goes on. People need these things to be able to do their jobs, which means that we have to be able to do our jobs to support them. In this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast, we explore the idea that IoT is just going to make things more difficult. Welcome to the Tech Field Day podcast, where we bring together a group of IT technical experts to discuss a single idea about key concepts in the enterprise IT industry. This podcast features a variety of perspectives from members of the Tech Field Day delegate community and is often recorded in association with one of our events. Tech Field Day is a part of the Futurum Group, and this podcast is also published on our sister site at techstrong.tv. On this episode, we'll be discussing that IoT is going to make things even harder than they are now. Before we jump into this discussion, I would like to take a moment for our guests to introduce themselves, starting with Denise.
Hi there, it's Denise Donohue. I'm a network architect slash business architect, and you can find me on Blue Sky at Lady Networker.
Pete Welcher, CCIE, longtime network architect and designer, person who can't handle getting mute off on his own computer, however.
And of course, I am Tom Hollingsworth. I'm an event lead here at the Futurum Group in Tech Field Day. So let's jump into the premise of this episode that I've already hinted at. We are being inundated with a variety of IoT devices. And if you think that Internet of Things is just a simple thermostat or perhaps a garage door opener, you're sorely mistaken. Because in the enterprise, IoT encompasses so many other things. It can be badge readers, it can be temperature sensors, it can even be the access points and the other devices that we have around us with extra added features that we never could have thought possible. But with all of those extra added features and connectivity come networking challenges. And Lord knows the network was complicated enough before we added a few billion devices to it. So as stated, the premise for this episode is that the Internet of Things is just going to make things harder on us networking people. So I want to start off talking to two people who've been doing networking for quite a while. How has the explosion of connected devices made networking harder? Because I remember a time when, in order to get something on the network, it literally required to have us go out with a vampire tap and poke holes in cables. And now it's just like, oh, boot it up out of the box, connect to the Wi-Fi, and everything works just fine.
Exactly. And part of the pleasure of having IoT devices and sensors, and particularly in medical environments, there are lots of stuff getting tacked onto the network, is a lot of the vendors don't have deep experience with being on a network. And some of them expect multicast to just work with some strange variation, other pleasant surprises like that. And so staff can end up having to scramble. The other thing that kind of happens is that people don't think about the constraints of Wi-Fi, and so, my whatever it is stopped working when I rolled into the loading dock. So you get surprises, and so the volume of devices, the number of things that you have to manage has gone up. But the environmental sensitivity of these things, they're also all have their quirks, and you have to deal with that. And so it's an increasing burden on staff, which is a whole topic for another discussion at some point. But yeah, you have to figure out a way to make it easy. The other part of that is maybe getting ahead of the loop on it, where you can test devices if there are alternatives being considered, figure out which ones are going to make your life easier rather than just having whatever some panel of doctors or who knows imposed on you that happens to be really quirky or flaky.
Now you're assuming there, Pete, that people in the IT departments actually have a say in what's what's imposed on them too, which I think is part of the thing, is trying to get that representation and with the decision makers, with the ones who are doing the evaluations, and having IT and having manageability, usability, etc., be part of the criteria.
So I think that's some of that comes down to networking staff sometimes seem to be hesitant to communicate upwards, and you really need somebody that can speak for you and be present in meetings and surface concerns and also be aware of what's coming so you can get ahead of maybe get into the evaluation cycle rather than having something thrown over the cubicle divider and having to deal with that, so to speak.
Which may be one of the reasons that all this IoT, coming IoT things are going to make be so much harder on the network staff. I mean, I think you've got two things going on here. Then you've got the actual network itself and the impact on that, the amazing capabilities that that new devices are bringing to the enterprise, and then IT being able to manage, control, help with the decision, like be part of the business business conversation.
And I think that it's important that people understand that sometimes these decisions are made, kind of like you said, outside of the purview of IT because there's not a lot of room for negotiation. So you might be thinking, oh, well, this is a factory milling machine that we're trying to bring online. But I want you to put yourselves in the hands of a hospital administrator, or actually in their shoes, because hospitals are filled with IoT devices. Insulin pumps are probably the most common piece of equipment that I hear about. But when we start doing things like asset tags on wheelchairs or laptops or those rolling mobile nurse stations, those are other good examples of devices that we want to keep track of and we want to make sure are able to connect to the network anywhere in the building, but they have their own unique challenges. And especially in the hands of an insulin pump, it's not like you're going to be able to log into that insulin pump and change the firmware on it or modify much at all because it is kind of a self-contained unit designed by that organization that allows it to get online. And if it needs something like, oh, I don't know, the lowest 802.11 data rates re-enabled, like an old Xbox or something, you could conceivably cause a massive impact on your network because you have to turn those things back on.
Well, are you guys seeing that things like infusion pumps, other IoT devices are more network aware now? When they first started being adopted by hospitals and other enterprises, the the manufacturers basically had no clue as to how to handle a network, how to handle VLANs, even to the point, remember the whole layer, it has to be layer 2 connectivity.
I can't claim comprehensive knowledge on that topic, but I think it's all over the map. Vendors are all over the map, and it's not just hospitals. There, where it seems to be hitting our customer bases the most, but just tracking locations and temperatures and stuff like that, tracking equipment in an office, uh, getting feedback from your printers, whatever. Everything wants to talk on the network now. So but IoT specifically, the stuff, there are more and more sensors out there. So temperature, did the temperature start dropping ridiculously in some part of the building, or is it way too hot? And people are going to be upset when you don't get the readings on that. So I think I think the next 10 years maybe are going to be full of people coping with a variety of IoT and other devices, sensors, cameras, all sorts of things getting put on the network, and people coming out of the woodwork complaining that it doesn't work well.
Well, yes, to answer your question, Denise, I think that um, medical device manufacturers are becoming more network aware, but that's not exactly saying like it would have been almost impossible for them to go any lower. And it's for the same reason that a lot of people who install other IoT devices are finding challenges in their network is because the network pieces are just a component of the device, right? Think about your average, I don't know, like a Raspberry Pi, right? Does a Raspberry Pi have a Wi-Fi 7 card in it? Well, probably not, because it is a $35 computer. And in order to get that price point, they have to make some compromises, right? So it has a different Wi-Fi chipset. I mean, something even like an Apple Watch does not have the latest and greatest hardware. And when I say latest and greatest, I mean like Wi-Fi 6 or 6E. Like they don't have those. Or LTE radios is another good example, because we're starting to see some IoT devices that have LTE CBRS uplink capabilities, but they're enterprise IoT devices. They are expensive. And so, like, I don't necessarily know that I want my insulin pump to have a 5G radio in it. I get why you might want to put it in there, but I don't think the insulin pump manufacturers want those either, because it raises the average unit cost, and then they have to raise their average selling price in order to be able to get them out there. So I think that they're understanding that they need to adapt with the times, but it could also be that, if they've been ordering these radios from, I don't know, Qualcomm for years, like the reason why there's more or better support in there is not because they've sought it out. It's just because Qualcomm said the base radio in this now has these extra features.
And costs keep dropping, so they can build more functionality into the chips. Location in particular, I think, is going to start popping up over the next few years, but right now it's a little bit pricey for just absolutely everything.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because location is another thing that we deal with a lot, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but there's been a big push to be able to do location tracking. Now, obviously, we have two different kinds of things that we have to worry about here. The first thing is we need to track devices. So insulin pumps, wheelchairs, laptops. We need to know where those devices are in the network. And I'll give you an example. Anybody that works in a maternity ward or in a birth center now, all of the babies that are there are tagged with tracking devices, basically. And that way, if they get too close to an exit to that area, there's an alert that pops up. And I hate to say it, but a baby is a thing, right? Because a baby is an inanimate object as far as the system's concerned. It can't interact with the system itself. But then you have the next level, which is mobile devices. So laptops, phones, tablets, that kind of thing. And when you look at solutions like, I'll just pull one out of the hat, like Aruba's old Meridian system, like being able to know where Dr. Jones was at any point because he was logged into a tablet running an app that would give the location, Dr. Jones is on floor 4. We're starting to see that evolve. One of the most recent mobility field day events that we had, Cisco showed off technology where their access points now have barometers in them so that they can tell the elevation of an access point in a given space, in addition to GPS, because GPS gives you latitude and longitude, but not elevation. And a barometer gives you elevation above sea level so that, for example, this is on the 8th floor of a high rise. So that changes the way that your patterns match up, but also it helps with location. So was this device detected with this signal strength? Does that mean that it's on floor 7 or floor 6?
And that could be useful in, you reminded me of a war story, but that could be useful in troubleshooting. One thing that we ran into a while back was the CEO of a company was getting poor Wi-Fi in his office. Turned out he was associating with something 60 feet down the hall rather than the AP that was right outside his door, which for some reason wasn't functioning on the 5 gigahertz band. So he was far enough away to have a very weak signal, but being able to locate the AP that somebody's associated with without having to physically go out there and eyeball it could be pretty handy in circumstances like that. Part of your troubleshooting loop. And then just marking locations of things on maps, anything mobile, as opposed to playing find the wheelchair, find the smart board, find the whatever it is. And we're seeing that in other areas. I just saw that AirTags and United Airlines will give them the ability to track your lost luggage, allegedly. Kind of curious how that's going to work out. Are they planning to lose my luggage? I don't know.
They don't have to plan to. That happens anyway.
And it's a good point that you bring up there, because just like we've seen with other things in the industry, a lot of these changes that people are expecting in the enterprise are being driven by consumer grade technology. So, like, yes, it's nice to know where the insulin pumps are. It's nice to know where the wheelchairs are. But even that, has resolution of meters, right? Like, I can tell you it's within 4 feet of me right now, which most of the time is good enough. But when you look at what people are doing, and Apple's Find My Network is a perfectly good example, It used to be that Find My could give you like a 3 meter bullseye, right? Well, that's great if you're trying to find a car. It's not great if you're trying to find a lost AirPod. And so, with the addition of with things like ultra wideband chips, like you can zero in within inches, and that helps, and not just, hey, it's somewhere in this vertical section. Like you can literally take out your phone and it'll say, do the warmer colder thing. And I think a lot of people are wanting that kind of functionality in their network for certain things, right? Like, you know, I laugh because it used to be, remember the movie cart at the school that had like the projector and everything on it, and you'd wheel it to a classroom, and you could, think back
Hmm.
then how easy it would have been. Oh, well, who has the projector today? Or, well, so and so Denise checked it out, but it's in Peter's classroom. I don't understand what's going on. And so people just kind of assumed that enterprise tech should be able to do that because it's more expensive. And we're not there yet.
Which brings up another way that the IoT explosion is going to make our lives harder, and that's managing it, using it. What do you like? Who's the one who looks to see where that is? Who's the one who makes sure all that information is up to date? Who's the one who's checking to make sure when something's going offline? Who is it that's finding use cases for this technology?
Well, there's also the dark side, which is customer tracking. Oh, gee, they paused for quite a while in front of the display case for a new Mac. Maybe I should get a salesperson over there to sell them the new Mac or whatever. Why am I picking on Apple? Well,
That says,
yeah.
I saw that yesterday you looked in a new Mac.
Oh, no, 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 no. It is more nefarious than that. So they can track you through the store if you're using their loyalty app or what have you. They know how long you paused in front of a given section. And with the advent of digital price tags, if they notice that there's an area that's getting more traffic, they can increase or decrease the price. And this is one that I've heard. I can neither confirm nor deny this has happened. They'll increase the price in a given area and then text you a coupon to give you a discount to encourage you to buy the thing because you're spending more time over there. And so granted, there's a lot of integration that has to happen in order for this to occur, but we've seen instances of this for a very long time. Just think of something as simple as Costco recently rolled out a new change where instead of you showing your membership card to the person at the door, you scan it when you walk in to verify your membership. And I thought, oh, well, that's a good idea. I guess they really want to make sure that the people who are in there are doing that. But I watched a video where someone said it's not just that. They know how many people are in the store in a given time, so they know how many people have to be working up front to run the checkout lanes, or if they can be on the floor stocking items or things like that. And I remember working a retail job where it's like, yeah, there could be 100 people in the store, there could be 10 people in the store, and if it's a big enough store, you won't know until they all go try to check out at once.
Yeah, boy, that's an awesome use for IoT and for technology to be able to do that to help consumers. I'm assuming then that would then go further as to say, okay, we know that this person has shopped here. We can kind of track this person around, etc.
Or something as simple as Walmart Pay. You can pay with your phone because they don't support NFC payments. They don't support Apple Pay or Google Pay or anything like that. They have their own version. But it also means that because the app connects to the register, they can see what you've bought, so they can kind of get a buying history, which I'm sure is probably the reason why they're doing it. But the integration of that technology, which is also IoT related, is just going to continue to drive these new insights and this data, which is what people have wanted for years, right? That was the original goal behind Facebook ads. I can tell you what people like, so you can target your ads to the people that they're the most effective for. And, think of all the times that you've heard stories about Facebook popping up the ad for the thing you were thinking about buying. Or, you searched for something on Amazon and then suddenly your Instagram feed is full of those things. And it's kind of frightening to see the intersection of all of those things. But that's from us as a consumer perspective. Us as IT professionals, we have to support that infrastructure. So what happens when it goes down? Or worse yet, what happens when it creates other problems? Because as we've seen over the years, just pick a random technology, whether it's the thermostat in a fish tank or the point of sale system or what have you, they're all security. They increase the security attack surface because it turns out it's easier to hack those things than you realize. So, are we opening ourselves up to even more problems having these devices on our network and creating security exploit potential?
Good change. I was just about to bring up security because you have to secure the devices, but as you said, bigger attack surface. And so we got to deal with possibly crude operating system stacks or hacked operating system stacks, freeware that's built into devices, stuff like that.
And as computers get better, I mean, look at the stuff that's happening with quantum. Um, then it's going to get more. There's more and more capability for doing that, for cracking passwords, etc. So then the downstream effects of that. I was thinking, as you were talking, Tom, the downstream effects of all that data that's being gathered at the on the data center side, on the compute, storage, etc. Side. So that just leads to then, okay, what are you going to do with your data? How are you going to manage that? On the IT staff is another thing that we need to be preparing for.
Yeah. Because once you know that data is there, it's a very tempting target for people to want to take a look at. So I guess the best question would be, because I love doing this on the podcast that I'm part of, what is something that enterprise IT admins, enterprise network admins, and engineers today, what can they do to start preparing for this oncoming wave of IoT? Because let's be honest, we're going to see it. There's no way around it. We've been seeing it for years, whether it's intelligent building HVAC systems or I don't know, like connected lighting, whatever it is. What are things that people can do today to make their networks more ready to have that technology and not be overwhelmed by it?
Well, you have to have a well operating network, but the other thing that really comes to the front of my mind is you have to have a frank staffing conversation with management, I guess. And management tools come into that as one part of it because either you automate it and manage it with good tools. If you go El Cheapo, you need manpower, person power, and you can't just keep dumping more work on the poor networking staff because they'll quit. So you have to staff for it and be prepared for that. And as the technology broadens, the other thing that comes into play is expertise. How much knowledge can you fit into the set of heads that you've got working for you? Um, and so this is not to knock anybody, but this is where there seems to be increasing business for consultants, where you bring in somebody one day a week or as needed to deal with stuff that's a little bit out of too esoteric for your staff, or to design it right in the first place, which is sometimes a overlooked skill.
And I don't think it's bad. I know a lot of people look at bringing in a consultant as like kind of something that's giving up or whatever, but I don't think that's bad given a specific set of skills that the consultant might bring that would help you then prepare your network and troubleshoot an issue, change the network somewhat as you need to handle the the growing the growing demands on it. But yeah, I think skilling up, being aware of this, being aware of what's happening in the industry and your company too, trying to get a seat at the table or enable your boss, help your boss, some get a seat at the table when these things are being decided.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree that you've got to be able to have a say in the changes. You've got to know that something is coming, and you can't just accept that you're not gonna have any control over it. I mean, if there's only one device that you can buy that does this, then great. You already have a list of requirements you're going to need to worry about. But if there's multiple devices, if there's multiple ways that you can, get the conversation going and maybe select one over the other because it's going to be easier on your network, then absolutely do that. But if you don't understand what's out there, then you're going to be playing catch up the whole time. And it's important to do research. It's important to understand where that is. And for certain organizations like a hospital, that's real easy to do because you know you're going to have lots of IoT devices. But don't think you're going to be immune from it just because you work in a standard office, you work for a law office or what have you. Just like looking at what the most popular gift items are for a given Christmas season will tell you what's going to show up on your network in January. Looking at what is being released at things like CES or the NAB show will tell you what's going to wind up being something you're going to have to support by March or April when it gets released.
If I'm somebody listening to us talk about this, I think if I'm a network person listening to this, I think the thought would be running through my mind was, oh, holy wow, I have so much going on right now, running like crazy on the treadmill, trying to keep up, and now you're telling me I have to go further. But I think the answer is yes, we are sadly telling you need to at least carve out some time to think about the future, to not just be reactive, but I think, as you said, Tom, be proactive in figuring out what do you think is coming and where do you fit in that? What do you need to do to make sure you're still fitting in that?
Yeah, thinking back to consulting at some organizations and some of my peers' stories, a bunch of organizations are kind of missing middle to senior management just in the networking group. So they have a few networking people that go move cables and install stuff, but they're sort of in yes, boss, which fire do you want me to put out next mode, as opposed to using their brain and providing feedback and well, they're probably using their brain. I don't need to slam them, but they're not integrated with the budgeting and the senior management levels that need to be involved in buying appropriate net management tools, hiring more staff, that sort of thing. Deciding whether you have enough staff to handle all the devices you've got.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me on this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast. Before we go, where can people connect with you and continue this conversation? Denise?
Well, LinkedIn, you can look me up there under, I think it's Denise-Donohue with a Donohue. And Blue Sky, Lady Networker.
LinkedIn and Blue Sky, my login, my user ID is my initials, P as in Peter, J as in Joseph, and then my last name, Welcher, at whatever it is. So easy to find.
And of course, I am on the socials pretty much everywhere as a networking nerd, mostly active on Blue Sky right now as networkingnerd.net, which is also the name of my blog. And you can also see all the stuff that I do for Tech Field Day at techfieldday.com, as well as futureandgroup.com. I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast. Remember, if you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe on our YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast application so you don't miss a minute of the exciting conversations. If you do that, though, please make sure you give us a rating and a review so everybody knows what we're all about here. This podcast is brought to you by Tech Field Day, which is the home for IT experts from across the enterprise, and it is a part of the Futurum Group. For more upcoming events and episodes, please make sure you head over to our website, techfieldday.com/podcast, or view us over on techstrong.tv. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.